This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
We're not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. You are the resistance.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network. Today is June 10th, 2024, and this is the 131st episode of the Conscious Resistance Live. For the next hour and a half, I'm going to be breaking down a couple of important stories that I think you need to know about. First off, we'll be picking up with the latest information about Israel, which is obviously an important story, ongoing story for the last 8 months. I regret that I haven't been covering it daily like people like my buddy Ryan at the Last American Battleground. But there are some important developments that we're going to share, as well as I'll show some clips of a video that I took this weekend at a protest, a rally for the Palestinian people here in Houston, Texas. And we're also going to talk about the latest update on my series looking at Bethany Christian Services, which is a Christian adoption firm, which if you've been following my reporting, you know that a lot of their actions are far from Christian, I would say. We're going to talk about their actions, coercion, threats, manipulation, etc., to mothers. I spoke with 4 different mothers this article, the second article in the series. 3 of them went on the record for the first time ever, and we are going to talk all about that. I hope you guys will stay tuned for that. And then finally, I have an update on some transgender science information, which I still think is an important topic that a lot of people might have made their minds up on, but it's still important to pay attention to the latest developments. Finally, I will be playing a music video as we do with this show. We always end with a video, a song from a conscious artist. I'm actually going to be the conscious artist tonight. I perform music under the name 33. I've got a new EP coming out next week. And last Friday, I just released a new song. So I'll play that song for you guys at the end of the show and tell you more about that. Also, we just got the brand new just hasn't even been released yet, but the brand new final edition of the Greater Reset 5 mini documentary. It's about 30 minutes long. Depending on how long I talk and how long this goes for, maybe we'll play that first on this show for everybody who tunes in. I want to invite you guys to share this feed. As I've told you before, and I will continue to say, the reason I'm bringing my show back and I'm doing it live now for all the channels right now, we're live on 3 Facebook pages, a YouTube channel, Twitter, Instagram, Odyssey, Rockfin. This is going to go up on BitChute. This is going to go up on Hive. This is going to go up on Spotify and all the podcasting platforms, and of course at theconsciousresistance.com. I think that I have a perspective that is sometimes missing from independent alternative media, where more and more independent media have now sunk into either leaning to the right and becoming maybe pro-Trump, and that's all they talk about is pro-Trump stuff, and anything bad about Trump is just Trump derangement syndrome, or sinking further to the left and maybe criticizing or attacking the right wing and Trump for things that are not always accurate. I don't claim to be in the center. I have my perspective, my opinion, but also as a journalist, I am capable of still giving you the truth. Just like with last week's episode, we talked about the Trump guilty verdict, and we looked at the claims that Trump's camp has been making that, hey, this is a targeted thing. There's some problems with the judge donating to Democrats, and that was true. And we also looked at the fact that Trump was found guilty of certain things that even people who claim to support Trump say that he did. So as usual, the truth is a little bit, is not black and white. And actually, this has got me thinking of a video that I've had in my mind for a long time. It's going to be called something to the effect of nuance is dead, why society argues in extremes, or something along those lines. And I have a running list that I keep of 4 or 5 different areas where it seems like we seem to be incapable of trying to find some reasonable discussion. Instead, it's like the loudest voices are the ones that are heard, and those extremes get amplified. And that's what most people are aware of or pay attention to. And that would include, I would say, the transgender discussion, Israel, other things that we could get into. But before we go further, I want to remind you guys to bookmark my website, theconsciousresistance.com. Guys, I've been producing content here producing content for 14 years, but producing content on this website, theconsciousresistance.com, for 11 years now. And I'm proud of it. I think that we've got a nice database here of all sorts of information, valuable reports. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got from one of my editors was to focus on evergreen content. And that's what we try to do at the Conscious Resistance. Yes, I will talk about the Trump verdict and things like that occasionally as they pop up and if they are important. But for the most part, I try to focus on the bigger picture. And that's what we do at theconsciousresistance.com. We focus on empowering you. We give you the news. We give you the truth. We also try to bring you solutions, focus on people who are promoting health, how to fix your health and mental, physical, spiritual health, and talking about exit and build, getting out of these systems, building new parallel systems, etc., as well as the hard-hitting investigative reports. Like my most recent interview I did, you can find it here, The Child Catchers and the Adoption Industrial Complex with Catherine Joyce. That sort of ties into our discussion on Bethany Christian Services that we'll be getting into in just a bit. But please bookmark theconsciousresistance.com. And as I mentioned, you can find us on BitChute, Hive, Minds, even though I don't post on there, Odyssey, Rockfin, Spotify. I got a Substack. We're on Telegram for Derrick Broze's Daily News and the Conscious Resistance. And I am also streaming right now on Instagram. So thanks to everybody over there who is checking this out. But before we get into the hard-hitting news, I actually wanted to play a couple of clips for you if we could. Now, the first one I want to play is from a video that's going to be released tomorrow on my channel, and it's from the Exit and Build Land Summit, which I'll just pop this back on. For those of you guys who watched before, I recently released my talk from the Exit and Build Land Summit, which took place in Texas a couple weeks ago. My talk was called Countering Agenda 2030 by Living a Holistic Exit and Build Lifestyle. You can find that at the website and all the aforementioned websites. I encourage you to check this out. I think it's one of my best talks I've given in a little bit, and you might enjoy it. Well, at that same event, my partner Miriam was there, and she was actually the one who opened up the event, and she did a talk/meditation, and that is going to be released tomorrow on our channels. But in the meantime, I like to show you guys just a quick 3-minute clip, because I'll tell you this, not everybody, but a lot of people in the room ended up crying because of Miriam in the best way. You know, they heard her words, they heard her meditation, and she touched them in a way that they expressed that was something they needed, which is always a beautiful thing whenever you're involved in something, speaking, writing, hosting an event, whatever, and people come up to you and tell you that it touched them in a very deep way. At least for me, the Conscious Resistance, etc., we're not here just trying to tell you all the bad things in the world. We're also trying to heal ourselves individually, because we understand that to create a better world, to create new systems, we can't just get out of the old and replace the same things. And that includes our relationships with ourselves, our relationships with people around us. We have to actually build new systems, including building new ways of relating to each other, and making it clear that we are here to heal ourselves so that we can help and build better worlds for the coming generations. Because if not, if we just exit the systems and we focus on crypto and getting guns and food and all that stuff, but we ignore the inner work, my friends, I think it'll take a little while, but we might cycle back and end up becoming the very things we were trying to fight, as every single revolution throughout history has ended up being. So check out this quick clip. This is Miriam Gomez, my partner. I titled this one, Connecting to Your Inner Child. Check this out. We'll be right back.
So go inside for a moment with me. We're going to practice this. And this weekend, during the talks, during the presentations, during your conversations, while you're reflecting at the end of the day with the things that really hit you. You notice in your heart that spark of inspiration when Rebecca said something. You notice that flame light up when John said something, when he shared that one thing. And with that spark, with that inspiration, you probably see a vision. You probably get a vision. That's your third eye. That's your intuition. That's your God's sight showing you the possibility, the potential, that version of yourself, right? That's you. That's you, baby. There is no doubt about it. That is you. And that is you right now. Yet, because we are human, doubts, fears, insecurities, they creep up in that moment too. So I want you to practice right now to see your 7-year-old self in front of you. Oh, I'm getting emotional. See your 7-year-old self Get down on your knees and give them a hug. Give them a warm, loving hug of safety, offering them all of the safety. Look them in the eye and say, I love you. You are worthy. You're safe. It's okay. Let's go for it. I got you. Why? Because those fears, those doubts, they come from the programming that we've all gone through in some way, shape, or form. And it's holding us back. And there's no need for it to hold us back any longer. The time is now. So in that moment, you come back and you look at that vision, that inspiration, that spark of inspiration, and you point your finger at it and you touch it in your heart, you touch it in your mind, you touch it in your body, and you say, the time is now. The time is now. And I'm here for it. Probably not the meditation you were expecting.
That was Miriam Gomez speaking at the Exit and Build Land Summit a couple of weeks ago. As I said, that talk will be released tomorrow on theconsciousresistance.com. I want to play you two other quick clips before we dive into the show, guys. Thank you again for tuning in. This is the 131st episode of the Conscious Resistance Live. My name is Derrick Broze. We're going to talk about Israel continuing the massacre of Palestinians. We're going to talk about Bethany Christian Services, and we're going to talk about a transgender science update in just a bit. First, I just wanted to play you two quick clips. I was on this podcast recently called What Bitcoin Did, and if you're not interested in Bitcoin or crypto, I think you still would find the conversation interesting, even if you get lost in some of the crypto discussion. The vast majority of it was more about my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, which I have right here. And you can download for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. You can find this podcast at whatbitcoindid.com or just search that on any platform. But check out these two quick clips. You get a little sample of what we were discussing.
I've said for years, we're in a digital arms race. I mean, they're going to build tools to spy, and somebody's building something to block it, and to get around it. And they're trying to come after Bitcoiners, and somebody's trying to build layer 2. We're just I just think we're at that point. So they got their AI, and they're going to use it for whatever reasons they can, and connect it to facial recognition. And surely there are people working on the opposite of that. And those are what I'm saying. When I say exit and build or support those who are building, because I can't build those things, but I definitely want those people on my team. And I'm grateful for the cypherpunks and those out there who are really trying to use these tools in that way. We've seen the games they play, lockdowns, passport IDs, all that. We would be foolish to not try to develop some kind of idea of, okay, what am I going to do next time? How am I going to make sure I can keep feeding my family without having to take the jab next time if it comes back, or having to do X, Y, and Z, whatever they say, hey, do this and you get your rights back. I want to be in a position to say, fuck you, I'm going to live my life and be free anyways, because I don't depend on your systems. This isn't easy, but the sooner we start having that dialogue and thinking about these things, I think the better off the most people will be. And maybe some won't want to go this route and will be content with what's easy and what's convenient. But I think in the long term, people will realize that they've given up privacy and liberty for convenience.
This has basically been my message for the last 5 years plus, but definitely since the first version of How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State came out in 2020, January 2020 to be exact, that most people are going to probably give up privacy and liberty for convenience, for entertainment, things like that, even if they're not consciously doing it, because our world, like for example, today, some of the big news that I've been hearing in the radio as I was driving in the car earlier is that Apple has just announced that the new iPhone 18 operating system is going to come equipped with OpenAI, ChatGPT, and you can do all sorts of cool things. Now, part of it is just the same old thing. They're always announcing new updates about cell phones. Like, for example, now they're saying you can schedule your messages like every other platform, things like that, right? But this is a little different because the integration of AI with regular technology, daily technology that millions and billions of people are using at this point is going to change things. Surely, in some ways, for the better, like making things easier, faster, quicker. But of course, we always assume that means things will be better. But maybe we don't need things to be faster, quicker, and get things done, get more plugged in, etc. My point is, the problems that I was discussing there on the What Bitcoin Did podcast are not going to go away anytime soon. We're going to continue to face these problems, and that is that privacy and liberty are under threat by the same technology that could potentially save us and protect us and help us in many ways. And technology, including AI, is a tool. I've talked about this before, that I have a friend who developed a chat bot called the empathy bot that you could talk to if you're depressed or if you're suicidal. And, these things are clearly tools, but at the same time, we're in a situation that we've never before seen. And so the threats are even greater. I invite you to check out that podcast because I enjoyed filming it last week in Austin, Texas. And I'm glad Peter got it out. I think we're probably going to end up talking more in the future because there was a bunch of people he said I should get connected to. And since we're doing the Greater Reset in the UK, Peter's from the UK. He's actually got a football team out there. And I imagine we will continue to talk. So stay tuned for that. Now let's talk about our lead story for the night. And that is Israel. And I want to start by saying that yesterday was Naksa Day. I'm just learning this history, but I went to an event in Houston. For those who are not aware, Naksa Day, it basically marks the end of the 1967 Six-Day War, where Israel gained access to the Gaza Strip. As it says here, the 1967 Palestinian Exodus, or Naksa, which literally means setback, refers to the flight of around 280,000 to 325,000 Palestinians out of the territories captured by Israel during and after the Six-Day War, including the destroying of numerous Palestinian villages, and they list a bunch of areas, and the, quote, emptying of the refugee camps. So this came at the end of the Six-Day War. So yesterday, Houstonian, not just here in Houston, but Houstonians who are also from the Palestinian community and their supporters marked this Naksa Day by holding this rally. So I'm going to play you just a quick clip of some of my footage I shot there, and we'll get into the latest news about Israel and some of the latest massacres, unfortunately.
Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! 1, 2, 3, 4! 1, 2, 3, 4! Open up the prison doors! Open up the prison doors! 5, 6, 7, 8! 5, 6, 7, 8! Israel is a racist state! Israel is a racist state! We from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Free Palestine. Free, free, free Palestine. We want justice, you say how? We want justice. Smash the settler Zionist state. Smash the settler Zionist state. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Free, free, free Palestine. Free, free, free Palestine. Let's don't you cry. Don't you cry. Yemen is by your side. Yemen is by your side. Let's 5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. Smash the settler Zionist state. 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 Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Free, free, free Palestine. Free, free, free Palestine. Colonizers, we don't need them. What we want is total freedom. What we want is total freedom. Colonizers, we don't need them. Colonizers, we don't need them. What we want is total freedom. What we want is total freedom. Free the people, free the
Okay. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. So I was muted for a second. I was saying I don't by any means claim to be an expert on Palestinian history or the Israeli conflict, but without a doubt, I have been following it for the last decade plus. So I'm continuing to follow these operations. I'm continuing to follow what's going on. And the one source I will recommend, there's a lot of them out there besides Palestinian people themselves, is Ryan with The Last American Vagabond, because Ryan has been just breaking it down on a daily basis. He's been just reporting on it nonstop. If you don't know Ryan, The Last American Vagabond, he does these 4-hour podcasts that I can't even handle. But my goal with today is to just show you the latest that has come out this past week, because I do think that we're at a point now, we're marking Naksa Day, which I just showed you the video there, and that marks from 1967, the Palestinian people being removed as the Israelis took over. And that, of course, was just the latest. There was history before that, going back to World War II. So this is a big, long history. But at the end of the day, I don't think you need to know that whole history to know when something is fucked up. Okay, let's just be real about it. So this was the latest report I found today here a few hours ago by Al Jazeera. At least 5 killed in Israeli attacks as Gaza hospitals appeal for help. Hospitals in Gaza, hampered by months of Israeli attacks and blockades, struggle to treat patients as the death toll mounts. Monday's attacks on Rafah and Khan Yunis have wounded at least 30 people, according to the Palestinian news agency. The casualties have been brought to the Nasser medical complex, but electricity shutdowns there could make it difficult for the injured to receive treatment. Palestinian officials said 40 bodies arrived at hospitals over the previous 24 hours, bringing the total number of people killed since October 7th, an estimated 37,124, and with more than 84,000 injured. I do want to say that, of course, these reports, they're coming from the Palestinian Health Authority, which some people don't trust because, it's run by Hamas. So there's reason to be skeptical. And then, of course, the Israelis, they have their own numbers, which, as you can guess, are much lower. But what we can say without a doubt is dozens, tens of thousands of people have died at this point, and nearly 50 to 100,000 people, somewhere in that range, have been injured in different ways. And there are more people in the thousands that are assumed to be dead who've been buried under rubble from the various bombings that have been taking place. In Rafah, the city on the southern edge of Gaza, where Israel launched their ground offensive just last week, residents said on Monday that tanks have been thrusting through deeper towards the north in early hours of the morning. So you got tanks just running through parts of Gaza. And guys, if you're on Twitter, probably on Instagram too, and you follow this, you've probably come across some of these horrible videos. I don't even intentionally try to watch these videos, but at the same time, I don't turn a blind eye to it, because trust me, does anybody want to see a dead baby? No, none of us want to see that, right? Especially if you've got kids. It's fucked up. That it stays in your head. It messes with you. That shouldn't be normalized in any way. We shouldn't have to sit here and watch a parent holding a dead child. And I say that whether it is Israeli or Palestinian child. And this is why I say you don't necessarily have to know the history to be able to speak about what's fucked up, because it's fucked up if an Israeli child dies. It's fucked up if a Palestinian child dies. But at this point, there's no, I think, moral person, honest person who can claim that the response by the Israelis since October 7th is justified or is in any way it's a force that goes beyond what we saw on October 7th. Now, that doesn't mean anybody here, me especially, I'm not justifying anything we saw on October 7th, but without a doubt, I think reasonable people can say that what's happened since then is gone above and beyond. It needs to end one way or the other. But unfortunately, guys, the reality is this conflict won't end. Even if the ceasefire is accepted right now, it's not going to go away. There's still going to be a lot of history, because there are people, and this is my opinion, take off the journalist hat for a second, but there are people who are obsessed with religion and this is Christians and Jews and others who want to make the Bible come true, or at least they think that they're fulfilling biblical prophecy by taking some of these actions. There are people who see this as a religious type of war, and I would include some Muslims in that obviously as well. That is what freaks me out. I'm not a religious person. I'm not someone who believes in the Abrahamic religions. Believe what you want. I know I'm not saying all Christians, all Jews, or anything like that. But without a doubt, there are psychopaths at the top, and some of them are in positions of government who are taking these steps, and they want to bring about the book of Revelation. So they want to bring about some of the horrific things that some people say are going to happen. So let's go through. I've got about 6 articles here to give you just some different perspectives. And I saw a comment a moment ago. Somebody says, I don't trust AP or Reuters. You shouldn't trust anybody, anything. Do your own research. Do your own, searching and use social media as a tool. This is the beautiful thing about social media. I can go on Twitter and I can find Palestinian people who are living or who have family members out there, and they're sharing video and pictures themselves. I don't have to trust AP. I don't have to trust Reuters. But yes, it does help when they actually report on it. That doesn't mean that everything they post is always accurate or that there's not an agenda behind it. But the mistake that I've seen so many people make in independent alternative media, the truth community, whatever you want to say, is that they assume that just because something is in mainstream, that it must therefore be false. And that's just as illogical as saying that everything in the independent media is true. We know that that's not true. There's all sorts of garbage and liars and hucksters and scammers in the independent media that will tell people whatever they want to hear if it gets them clicks so that they can sell ads so they can make money. That's the reality of the internet these days. So you have to be smarter than just trusting Reuters, trusting Derrick Broze, trusting Russell Brand, trusting whoever it is you actually follow out there, and think for yourself. Just let the information I'm sharing with you and the information you find on social media just be another piece of your toolkit as you go through life trying to understand it, using your own reason, using your own logic, and hopefully you have some reason and logic because you've spent some time developing those things. If not, hey, guess what? Now's a nice time to start. Israeli forces batter central South Gaza as tanks advance in Rafah. This is just, a couple days ago. With a renewed ceasefire push, Israel bombarded central and southern areas again on Friday, killing at least 28 Palestinians, and tank forces advanced to the western edges of Rafah. This is what we were just hearing in the other article. U.S.-backed Qatari and Egyptian mediators have tried again this week to reconcile the clashing demands, preventing a halt to the hostilities, as a release of Israeli hostages and Palestinians jailed in Israel, and an unrestricted flow of aid into Gaza. That's what they're asking for. But sources close to the talks said there were still no signs of a breakthrough. A month after rumbling into Rafah and what Israel said was an assault to wipe out Hamas's last intact combat units, tank-led forces have advanced to the southwest fringes of the city. So remember, they've been threatening to do this ground offensive for months now, and people have said, if you do that, it's going to kill a lot of people. There's no way to go in there and do some ground offensive and claim to, find these terrorists that you're allegedly looking for that are supposedly hiding among the people without innocent people dying. Well, guess what? They did it anyways, and they went through with tanks and guns, and there have been reports of nearly 300 people killed in the last few days. I mean, obviously there's more and more, but in this particular attack, the most recent one, there have been a couple hundred people who died as part of the ground offensive. Let's go to another one here. Israeli troops. Now, I'll give you the other perspective, right? So this is coming from Fox News. Let's look at their bias. Their bias is that they're Zionists. They're pro-Israel. So, of course, they're going to play up any news that purports to make Hamas look bad. But let's look at it. Let's see if what the headline claims is actually true. Israeli troops uncover Hamas's tunnel entrance inside child's room in Rafah. This is one of the big claims that the Israelis have, and the IDF has said, is that Hamas hides in children's rooms and in families' houses, and this makes it hard for them to get them. And this is why they have to do drone strikes that, we killed a few innocent people, but at least we got one bad guy, right? They said they caught 4 alleged terrorists, and they killed 250, 260, almost 300 people recently. I don't know what you make of that, but that doesn't seem right. Israeli troops discover an entrance to a Hamas tunnel inside a child's bedroom in Rafah on Thursday, according to the IDF, which again, this is the Israeli Defense Force. Do they have a reason to lie? I think so. It recovered a trove of weapons and explosives from the tunnel. The operation is the latest of what Israel calls its, quote, precise intelligence-based targeted operations. And again, precise when 300 innocent people are killed? Hardly. The IDF said in a statement, this week, troops located a tunnel shaft inside a child's room and a butcher's knife next to it. In addition, the troops identified 6 terrorists near a school in the area of the troops. The terrorists were eliminated by UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle, drones, and tank fire. And this is the image they put out. Let me zoom out a little bit. So this is like a little kid's room, and you know that, right? Because it's got a Snoopy towel and it's painted pink. I'm not saying this isn't a kid's room, but it's if you wanted to create a scene and say this is a kid's room, you would paint it pink. You would put little kids' toys. And there appears to be some kind of hole in the ground, in the floor. Now, we have no idea how that hole got there, of course, and who made it exactly, but this is their claim. Now, again, I'll go back to Ryan at The Last American Vagabond. Ryan has reported and shown more than a few times how claims by Israel of of having a hole in the ground have later been debunked. Like they claimed similar things and they went into hospitals a couple months ago and they claimed they found evidence of weapon caches that was later found to be false. There's just too many times, and I don't have the data right here in front of me, but there's too many times where they have been found to be lying to just blindly trust them. And yet, at the same time, that's not me saying that Hamas doesn't do these sort of things. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm not there. Part of that does appear to be true, but we just have to understand, once again, like Fox News, they're Zionists, they're pro-Israel. So of course they're going to play up this angle, but are they going to have any information about the 200, 300 people who were killed as part of the precise ground assault? I don't know. Likely not. Let's look at this one from Common Dreams. The Rafah tents massacre exemplifies Israeli and U.S. disdain for Palestinian life. This is written 2 days ago. This reality is a disastrous tragedy for Palestinians, defining the United States for generations in a negative light, and ultimately harming Washington's soft power and any genuine effort to do good in the region. And it's just telling the story of just how fucked up things have gotten lately. It says, Palestinians have long been melted down into various data points, often relegating them to vague and dehumanizing categories in the so-called modern world. Israel's latest invasion of Rafah in southern Gaza and the May 26th massacre of roughly 45 Palestinians, most of whom were burned alive in the strike on their displacement tents, exemplifies this reality as Israeli leaders and United States officials continue to show disdain for Palestinian life. No one should confuse this utter disdain for Palestinian lives as a new phenomenon. This says a now viral lecture clip by Rafat al-Rir, a Palestinian poet and writer killed in Gaza in December 2023, highlighted Israel's approach to Palestinian life not long before his own death. Our Harsh Logic, which was a book authored by the Israeli Defense Forces veteran group Breaking the Silence, highlights Israel's tacit elimination strategy against Palestinians and Palestine and Palestinians. This is from the IDF's own veterans group's book. It says, quote, the grotesque images of a beheaded child and lifeless charred bodies of the victims, including a father and his young son burned alive while embracing each other, should constitute Biden's red line. According to the group and additional Israeli veterans hoping to shine a light on their country's atrocities, Israel arbitrarily kills Palestinians based on whimsical criteria like a person's gait, which is their walk, the color of their car, or what number they are in line as part of a larger plan to eradicate Palestinians. Central to its strategy is Israel's claim that these atrocities are accidental when murders occur. This strategy is prominent in Israel's genocidal assault on Gaza, which has killed, maimed, and starved Palestinians to, quote, thin the population. It seems like population control. Major human rights groups, including those in Israel, have identified atrocity after atrocity in this regard, including strikes on churches, mosques, just killing entire neighborhoods, hospitals, schools, and we could go on. And of course, there's the fact that there is a AI involved in this. I think it's called Lavender program. They're using AI to go after people. That's another huge step up in this. And you guys get the point, I think. Here's another one, Christian Science Monitor. Once a seaside getaway, Gaza safe zone now feels like a polluted prison. And that's according to some Palestinians. You can see this picture here from a tent city of last resort in Mawasi, southern Gaza Strip. This is about a week ago they took this picture. So it used to be a beautiful beach. It still is a beautiful beach, but now most people are having to put their whole lives there because they've had to run around. They went down to the south to avoid bombing, is what they were originally told, that it was going to be a safe zone. And now it's become a tent city of last resort. This is Al Mawasi, strip of sand dunes and citrus farms, 8.7 miles long and a little over a half a mile wide. It is now emerged as a tent city for Gaza's displaced people, now home to an estimated 700 to 900,000 Palestinians seeking to escape Israel's military offensive in the south. And they just got some pictures here. One of the guys who, along with his 6 children, used to view this as a getaway. He says, we used to come here as a recreational resort. We could bring a pot of tea, coffee, a chicken to grill, or ready-made food and enjoy quality time with family and friends. Now they're there, and he says it's polluted, it's crowded, the conditions are unsanitary, as he navigates a narrow sandy alley between tents of canvas and nylon. This is no way for anyone to raise a family, he says. I used to come here for tourism, but I never expected to live here. And there's some kids playing on the beach, probably thinking of better times. There's a family there that was just taken 8 days ago. So the situation gets more and more drastic. This is from the Times of Israel, which obviously is a pro-Israel outlet. June 9th, following Gantz. Gantz is this Israeli politician who just resigned, and they're making a big deal of it all over the mainstream news. And what's this going to mean? I'm just not really that interested in that. What I care most about is the people who are fucking dying, and just bringing an end to it. I'm not pro-Israeli government. I'm not pro-Hamas or Palestinian government. I am pro the Palestinian people, pro-Israeli people, and all the people who hopefully can see beyond the divisive lines of religion, of ethnicity, and of just borders. Like, I'm not saying let's get rid of borders and get rid of national identity, or let's get rid of your ethnic identity or your history, your cultures. But if you let those things take you to a place where you're dividing yourself from your brother and your sister, and that becomes a bigger thing than being a human being and trying to see how can we create a better world. I don't think that's really helpful, right? So I think that we have to figure this out. I mean, I don't think that there's any way that our generation alone is going to figure it out. I do think younger generations are trying to get past this, and that the young people today who weren't, especially those who were born post 9/11 and who didn't see the Iraq war and millions of dead Iraqis and didn't see the drone bombings when we started to wake up to that, this is their first taste of the real United States. The Zionist Nazis, and I think that's an accurate claim, is probably going to get one of these videos taken down. The U.S. Neocons and all of that, the uniparty that loves war and violence and death, there are people who are sick of it. This is why I went a week and a half ago and I asked RFK Jr. about his thoughts on Zionism. This is why I asked, I tried to ask Trump this. I've tried to ask anybody I can, because this is the issue, not the only issue, but this is the issue that matters, right? And that's one thing that you should recognize, is that all three of the major candidates, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., if you include him, Trump and Biden, they're all Zionists. They all kissed the ring of Israel. And that is a test. This is why many of us, I see some people going down the rabbit hole and they end up like thinking all Jews are bad. It's all the Jews. And I see you folks over there on BitChute who think that. Shout out to you. You guys suck. But I see you out there, and I think that's the wrong way to go. It's not just a one person or one religion. I think this is Zionism. You can be a Christian Zionist. You can be an atheist Zionist. It's really about this mindset. And then even bigger than that, above and beyond that, I think there's this predator class, this predator energy that infects people and allows them to see their brothers and sisters as less than human beings. And I think that's what it really comes down to. And so much of our problems in this world can be traced back to that, seeing each other as less than human beings. Let's go ahead. We're going to do a couple more Israelis, and then we'll wrap this one up. The won't let Palestinian Authority have role. This was just reported days ago. This puzzle as they're trying to find a ceasefire, and Israel claiming that it's just Hamas that won't accept the ceasefire, but it clearly doesn't, who definitely doesn't want to accept the ceasefire, because if they did, somebody, whether they're going to say that, clearly they pay no mind killing Palestinians, and if they miss them, then okay, well, we tried, right? But they're not shedding any tears over it. And I think that unfortunately there might be some propaganda both in Palestine against the Jews, the Israelis, and in Israel against the Palestinians that is difficult for us outside to understand. Because I do have friends who are from Israel, and I have Palestinian friends, and I have others, and I'm not an expert. My opinion, though, is that there are people in those communities who have been propagandized to hate the other. And then when you create this other, it allows for this dehumanizing. And this is why I don't like language when, and I've done videos on this, when people in our community say, oh, the left wing, they're domestic terrorists or they're domestic extremists. It's like we want to flip the words that are used around and turn them back on other people. In reality, we're just playing into that language, and it's like it's a race to the you're a terrorist. And then the next one of those people gets in power, and they're going to treat these terrorists, and that becomes a game. Just like we're saying with those guys now, the elections, we can't trust them. It's a race to the bottom. And guess what? When you get to the bottom and there's chaos, you know what comes next? Order out of chaos. This is a New York Times article that I thought was interesting. All these will be linked in the show notes afterwards, by the way. But this is just, all it is doing is just showing how the tense cities have, where we're at in mid-April, late May. We mentioned many of the Palestinians were to go south, that they could avoid being stayed out, with. And of course, as they were leaving, many of them bombed. And as it was off for central Gaza in early May, so that south became. This is my show the pictures because I'm archival. Well, yeah. That's our growing. And just go back and walk your whole life and hope that you don't get bombed by the way. This is fucking. And I'm not funding it. I'm not. Right. Let me see if we can. It's better now. Could hello. Yeah, it was the NSA. It was the IDF, the Mossad. All right. Sorry about that. All right. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. We're wrapping up the Israeli story here. I was just basically saying, sorry, I got all choppy there, that this is just another example of how messed up things have gotten. The Israelis, the Palestinians have constantly had to go from one area, go to the next, go up, go south, go to the central, and just to try to avoid being bombed. I mean, it's just fucked up when you think about it. And I don't have a lot more to say on this. Still choppy, mother. Well, I don't really have a lot more to say on this topic other than just this, that I think that do. I try to share on social media. I went to this rally on Sunday to stand in solidarity with Palestinian people. I video, not much, but I'm trying to do what I can. Earlier, for those who are here and heard me, none of us want to look at a dead baby. None of us want to look at a person, is really a Palestinian, American, buddy, holding their dead child. And those videos, you've seen some of those of you who can stomach them. I know a lot of you don't want to. I know, like, I can't hear about this. I can't show it to her. It's too much for her. And I get that. This is on your butt. Listen to this. I'm hoping it's a connection. There's really nothing I can do. Go if it's civil thing. I don't know what to do. And now I'm totally cut out. It looks like I'm cut out. All right. I'd like to go to the next story. But before we do a quick break, I'll wrap up this thought and we'll try to get this fixed. I'll be right back. Check this out.
Are you using your phone, or is it using you? Rise above mass surveillance and discover a phone that protects your privacy and communications.
Above Phone does everything your old phone does, without tracking you, while giving you complete control over your phone and apps. We are better than big tech. It works with any cell service. No forced logins. No advertising or tracking. Download apps privately. Control your phone and its apps with secure hardware. Introducing Above Suite. Protects your internet traffic. Private email on any device. Video call with friends privately. Encrypted chat, calls, and internet phone. Protect your searches and get results. Don't worry if you're new. Every phone includes a free 45-minute live call. You also get free email and chat support, free guides, and video courses. We can take back our technology. We're here to help with tools and education. You have the power.
Rise above with Above Phone.
AbovePhone.com.
All right. If you can hear me now, I hope it's working all right. I'd had to play that quick commercial. I'm back. Hopefully I didn't lose too many of you. Internet issues, my bad. And maybe it was the IDF, maybe it was the Mossad. I don't know. But thank you guys for listening. I just felt that it was important to talk about a little bit of the latest of what's going on with the Israeli and the Palestinian situation. It's not like there's good solutions. It's not like I can tell you guys we're going to solve this crisis tonight by talking about it. Then, but I still think it's important to talk about. I still think that we have to figure out how we can get beyond those things. My big point I was trying to wrap up at the moment is that if we allow ourselves to other, do you understand that idea when you other somebody like, oh, they're not one of us. They're a domestic extremist. Oh, that person's Jewish. Oh, they're a Palestinian. Oh, they're Mexican or they're American, whatever. And that's not part of the group that you're a part of. Oh, that's not one of us. That person is one of those people outside there from the other side of town. This is called othering. And othering is a process that usually precedes way more fucked up things. Like in order for people to get to the point where they're willing to say, yeah, let's kill all those people, or you know what, I know it's messed up, but they shouldn't have broke the law. First in your mind, you have to other them. You have to get to the point of like seeing them as not one of us, not a person, not a human. They're not part of our club. They're something different. And part of that is the dehumanizing process. You often hear this when politicians or tyrants, people, and I think Trump is one of them, speak about individuals as if they're not human. They call them scum, they call them parasites, things like that, right? This is dangerous language. And I'm not saying silence them, freedom of speech and everything, but still, it doesn't mean we can't point it out when we see it. So the issue that we have where so many people are, and I don't even mean hardcore Zionists who are, of course, going to make excuses for Israel no matter what, but regular people who are continuing to go about their lives, even though we know all this horrible stuff is happening. And again, what are we supposed to do? I'm not saying you should stop taking care of your family, stop going to work, live on the street and just die because you feel so sorrowful for what's happening with the Palestinians. But at the same time, isn't it fucked up that we live in a world where we just have to keep going? We have to keep going, and you just see more messed up things on Twitter. You see more messed up things on the internet and on the radio or whatever. You see it in the newspaper for whatever newspapers still exist. And we just go about our life. And as our friend here says, it's hard to live a normal life knowing this is happening as we speak. That's something I struggle with intensely, trying to make meaning in my own personal life, which I do find meaning in, and in my own joy, my own successes, but at the same time stepping back and being like, damn, I've got it pretty easy right now because I'm literally not having to pick up my whole life and carry my life from one part of the country to the other part of the country, hoping I don't get bombed and trying to assure my kids that it's okay, everything's going to be fine. And, God forbid, like actually having to hold one of your dead children. Like these are some really messed up situations. They're not going to get fixed. They're not going to go away tonight, tomorrow. But I still think that this is all part of a deeper symptom that humanity is flawed. And I don't mean that we're not capable of good things, but we are traumatized. There's so much fucked up things that have happened, intergenerational trauma between the Palestinians and the Israelis, like my lineage going back with native people in the Americas. I mean, no matter where you come from on this planet, there is trauma in your bloodline, your history. And that's why my work, The Conscious Resistance, we talk about the need for healing, because I don't think we can get to a better place without working on some of that deeper root causes. So I know that might not sound exactly connected to the whole Israeli thing. In my view, it absolutely is. All right, let's go into, we're going to talk about Bethany Christian Services now. And this is my second part in my probably going to be 3, maybe 4 article series about this organization. You can find this article at thelastamericanvagabond.com. LastAmericanVagabond.com. You can go over to the T-Lab team. You see my name, Derrick Broze, and you can find all my articles there, including this latest one, Bethany Christian Services, Mothers Speak Out. And as I said earlier, guys, in the process of this article, this specific article, I spoke to 3 mothers on the record, and then I've spoke to another who has shared, was originally the mother and the family sharing this information with me that are not yet able or ready to come out publicly. And this is not a story about Jeffrey Epstein. This is not a story about Israel. It's not headline news, but this is just as important as any of the other things you're going to hear about this week. And so I hope for the next 20 minutes or so here, you will give this your full attention. And when I put out a clip of this talk later, you will share it around. You will go to the LastAmericanVagabond.com, read the article, and read it. Because just like with the Israeli situation, just like I said, we need to be a voice for people who are suffering. I try with my work, whether it's the Epstein, the Finders, the Utah ritual abuse, a lot of these trafficking stories I've covered over the years, it's not about just trying to, what's the most salacious detail, and is there a celebrity involved? Is there somebody famous involved? I see people getting sucked into that. When we often forget that there are real people involved, there are victims, and in this case, there are mothers, there are families, and there are children, many cases now grown adult children, who have dealt with some pretty messed up things and are still dealing with it. They're still trying to process that. So at the end of the day, this is not about trying to, give you some salacious details of horrible things, because some of these things are not that great. Some of the people's stories and the ways that they were treated and lied to, and then unfortunately, some of the children through the adoption industry being sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused, psychologically abused. It's not fun stuff necessarily to read about. It's not necessarily fun stuff for me to dive deep into and to report on, but it matters. And these people, these women, these mothers deserve a voice. So that's why I wrote this article. It's about 3,000 words long. So it might be a little long for some of you, but I hope you will take the time throughout this week to read it. And the second part of our investigation into Bethany Christian Services, we speak to several mothers who were directly impacted by what they say were deliberate efforts by BCS to coerce, manipulate, and outright lie to them regarding the conditions of relinquishing their parental rights. Mothers who say they were lied to by the nonprofit adoption firm Bethany Christian Services are speaking out and warning anyone who will listen to be wary of promises made by BCS and other adoption agencies. As I mentioned before, this is an adoption firm, a foster firm, and they do pregnancy counseling. They describe their mission as, quote, an effort to demonstrate the love and compassion of Jesus Christ by protecting children, empowering youth, and strengthening families through quality social services. However, as I said, many women who've interacted with them have spoken out now about their traumatic experiences. And as I mentioned, we spoke with 4 women about their experiences. And while their stories differ in the specific details about how they came to know Bethany Christian Services, their outcomes are almost nearly identical. Every woman we spoke with told us that Bethany Christian Services promised that if they chose to relinquish their parental rights and allowed their child to be adopted, they would be able to participate in a so-called open adoption, where they would receive pictures of their children, letters updating them on their lives. And every one of these women said that the promises were not upheld and often were just completely ignored. And every one of these women also knows other women and other families who have been negatively impacted by Bethany Christian Services. And they are all part of what I've recently learned about, this growing online community of social media pages, websites, forums, dedicated to raising awareness about the problems that they've experienced, not only with Bethany Christian Services, but with the adoption industry in general. So that's sort of the background for what we're diving into. And now what I'm going to share with you guys after this is their specific stories. And again, I want to encourage you to read this. I don't want to sit there and read the entire article for you. It's quite long, but I do want to give you a taste of what some of these women have gone through. Now, the first thing I'll say is in part 1 of this article, we looked at who the history of Bethany Christian Services. They've been around for 80 years now, how they've gotten support from the DeVos family, who is most famous for Betsy DeVos, who is Donald Trump's Secretary of Education. The DeVos family is one of these evangelical Christian families that donate to evangelical Christian philanthropic organizations, including Bethany Christian Services. We also looked at how Bethany Christian Services has been involved in U.S. government separating of children under the Trump and the Biden administrations. And then we also looked at the history of lawsuits against Bethany Christian Services and parents who have accused them of manipulating or lying to them in order to secure adoption. So we covered all that in part one, but that was more broad. That was sort of on the public record, me finding out things that, you know, that were sent to me and shared with me. But now this, we talk with three women. The first woman, her name is Mickey. And we also talked to Charity J, and then we talked to Jennifer. So I'm going to share a little bit about these three women's stories. And again, you can find this article at thelastamericanvagabond.com. If you know anybody with Bethany Christian Services or who has experienced something with them, you can reach out to me at Derrick@theconsciousresistance.com or into the light at protonmail.com. Derrick@theconsciousresistance.com, into the light at protonmail.com. Because these women have also expressed to me that if any mothers who have gone through this are looking for people to talk to, they want to make themselves available to connect with you, to hear your story, and to help you know that you're not alone in dealing with this. So Mickey told me that she had a traumatic childhood involving physical and emotional abuse. She would end up being emancipated at the age of 16, and her birth mother died only 2 years later when she was 18 years old. And in 1990, she started dating an Indian man from her neighborhood. She was 21 years old at the time, and she said she shortly after that found out she was pregnant. And when she found out she was pregnant, he pressured her to have an abortion. And she would later find out that this man had 6 or 7 children and a wife back in India. And she went into hiding to avoid his pressure, because he was, again, trying to pressure her to have an abortion. She was trying to hide from him. He apparently returned to India and eventually comes back. He starts stalking her, continues to put pressure on her about this abortion. She's got no family support. As I mentioned, her mother died. She was emancipated at 16 years old, and she wasn't getting any from her ex-boyfriend. So she sought help from a counselor. And this is usually how this thing happens. I talked about this in the first article, that Bethany Christian Services appears to have contracts and deals with hospitals and with different types of organizations, social services. So in this case, Mickey, she's like in this situation, she's 21 years old, doesn't have a lot of financial, support of her own, doesn't have a lot of family support. The ex-boyfriend's pressuring her to get an abortion. She needs some help. So she goes to a counselor, and the counselor connects her to Bethany Christian Services in Chino, California. Mickey then meets the director of Bethany Christian Services in Chino, and she starts showing her families of pictures of families who might be willing to adopt her child once she has them. And Mickey specifically requested a biracial couple that might mirror her son's father's Indian complexion. The couple then introduced the couple that BCAS introduced to Mickey did not satisfy her request and said she was not comfortable with them, because basically what she told me was like they were like a white couple. And again, she has an half Indian son. She's like, it's going to be obvious that the baby, these are adopted parents, that might create some kind of problem. Maybe he can have some parents, the baby can have some parents that look like him. And when she spoke up about this and she expressed this to the Bethany Christian Services director, she was ignored. And she says at one point she was told that Child Protective Services would be called on her if she didn't have a proper home set up for her children. So let's kind of take stock of this. This is a pregnant mother, 21 years old, with no support. At this point, she has not signed over her rights or anything because the baby hasn't been born, right? You can't sign over parental rights. The baby's not born yet. But they're already putting pressure on her to go towards these certain families. And they're starting to say things like, well, look, if you don't do the adoption and you end up having your baby, we know your situation. You don't have a lot of money. You don't have a lot of resources. It's like, it would be a shame if somebody called CPS on you and, told them the situation you're living in. It's like these veiled and thinly veiled threats. And so that's what she was told, like, hey, CPS might get called on you and used against you if you don't have a proper home. So kind of putting that fear in her mind already. She said that the couple who was aggressively pursuing this adoption just would not back up, and that Bethany Christian Services was not offering any support for her. And again, at this point, she hasn't signed away any parental rights. It's just discussion on, hey, this family might want to have your baby. And they start getting super aggressive about it. And when she told Bethany Christian Services she was not ready to sign adoption papers, she says she was pressured into putting her child into foster care. This is, of course, after he was born. She says she put him in foster care and she continued to looking for solutions to keep her child. So at this point, she doesn't have the resources to take care of him, but she's not signing away her parental rights. So she puts him in some foster care. And then after a month of that, she signs adoption papers, and she believed that the adoption would be basically the best chance for her child to have a better life. But she still said that she felt pressured. She felt like she didn't have any support at the time. And after the birth and the adoption, Mickey sunk really deeply into what she told me was just a period of postpartum depression and heavy drinking. She said, quote, "I couldn't deal with losing my kid. I heard nothing from Bethany from that point on." She also says she wasn't provided any of the counseling that they had promised her prior to the adoption. And then this is the interesting part. She says her son's father eventually comes back into the picture, and when the child was only 3 months old, and he wanted to reclaim his parental rights. He basically said, like, okay, so you didn't get the abortion, but you adopted the baby. Like, I would have wished you would have not adopted him. She said it was a cultural thing, that he was very much against it. And when she told this to the Bethany Christian Services director, the father of the child said, "You're going to need to get an attorney if you want your child back." But the father didn't have money. Mickey didn't have the money to fight a potentially costly and lengthy legal battle, and so they were unable to reclaim the child. The father was unable to reclaim his parental rights. And Mickey also says that Bethany Christian Services failed to locate him prior to the adoption to see if the child had any other family that could care for him. And she basically said she was told to act as if her baby daddy, basically, that the father didn't exist, because this is what you have to understand, is if the child has another family member out there, then they're not supposed to adopt. They're not supposed to just give him out to some people. They're supposed to say, okay, well, look, the mom can't take care of him, but look, there is a family member available. The father's available. He has resources, etc. And maybe they wouldn't have even accepted him, but still, the point is they didn't even try. She says, quote, "Mickey told me this: they prey on people who don't have support, people who have dysfunctional families. They prey on women who are in very weak positions. I was completely lied to. My whole adoption was fraudulent." She says that she was told that the adoptive parents would pay for any counseling that she needed after the adoption. And of course, that didn't happen. She believed that it was going to be an open adoption, but she never had access to her child. Again, she says, quote, "I was never invited to see my child. If I wanted to write, I had to go through Bethany. Every night when I would go to sleep, I didn't know anything, what city he was in, who these people were. It was really bizarre." And she says, in the years since the adoption, she communicated with her child, and she learned of several incidents of physical and emotional abuse from the adoptive father, including a fractured arm. So that's what she told me, that we're not naming anybody, but obviously the child's father, adoptive father, she showed me text messages and information that seemed to confirm what she said, what she told me, that there was physical and emotional abuse to her child. She says her child has struggled with forming relationships and continues to deal with the trauma of the adoption and separation. Mickey also says that the adoptive parents also pulled her child out of school, often disrupting education. Now, this is where things take a little bit more of a turn, where up until this point, Mickey is, which I'll say here, Mickey is a pseudonym. Mickey is the name that this mother is using to speak to me on the record, but not with her real name. But Mickey's case is interesting because there's actually an investigation that took place related to hers, as well as another case involving Bethany Christian Services. In 2019, Mickey's case would end up becoming the subject of a complaint investigation against Bethany Christian Services. A copy of the report states that on December 24, 2019, the Community Care Licensing Regional Office in California's Department of Social Services received a complaint accusing Bethany of, quote, failing to follow adoption agency procedures. Now, this isn't a lawsuit. This is just a complaint, a citation. It's kind of, unfortunately, even though it's on the record, it's almost toothless. Like, it doesn't, Bethany, nobody went to jail. Nobody was fined as far as I could see. But this investigation involved confidential interviews with 4 members of Bethany Christian Services staff and a review of 2 adoptive family files and 2 what they call relinquishing parent files. And one of these files relates to Mickey's situation. The complaint says the investigation revealed that reference number 8, who was 17 years old at the time, and redacted, were relinquished in 1991, was being treated by a psychologist and had been prescribed medication due to mental health issues because of the murder of number 8's mother. Number 8 is Mickey, of course. And Mickey, as I mentioned, her mother had been killed when she was a young age. So they're confirming that the investigation shows that she was being treated by a psychologist and had been prescribed medication. For those who are looking on my screen, it looks all weird right there because I'm on a privacy browser. But if you look at it on your non-privacy browser, you'll be able to see the actual documents there. You can see they're embedded right there. The citation also states that number 8 disclosed this information to Bethany Christian Services, but there was, quote, no record that Bethany Christian Services referred number 8 to a licensed physician or a clinical psychologist for an evaluation to determine their ability to understand the content, nature, and effect of signing the relinquishment. So basically, under these adoption rules, they're supposed to check the mother, the parent, and they found that, hey, she was being treated. She had, issues from her mom's murder, and she might not have been able to fully understand what she was doing at the time. But Bethany Christian Services, even though they made a note that she was being treated by somebody, by a therapist, they tried to wiggle out of it and basically said that because it was a therapist, that doesn't meet the same, it's not the same thing as a psychologist. Basically, Bethany, in this case, they made the adoption, they bent the rules, even though they knew that according to the law and the adoption procedures, this adoption shouldn't have taken place. And it was concluded that a preponderance of evidence had been met and that the complaint against Bethany was substantiated. The, quote, plan for correction ordered this agency to include requiring the relinquishing parent to receive 3 references for mental health providers. Then Bethany would speak to this mental health provider. So not really anything big, but again, it's on the record that they did something wrong. Mickey told us, quote, I was on Social Security disability. They were supposed to contact my psychiatrist. They never did. They bypassed everything that they were supposed to do. And Bethany was notified about this investigation November 2020, and they would appeal the decision 2 times in January and March 2021. They attempted to argue, as I said, that they weren't required to report Mickey's therapy or counseling because it did not qualify as psychiatric treatment. But guess what? Both of Bethany's attempts to wiggle out of this, they were denied. Both appeals were denied. And Mickey said, quote, they determined because of what I was diagnosed with that I didn't have the mental capacity at the time to consent to knowing what this meant for the rest of my life. She believes that Bethany took advantage of her vulnerability and her fragile emotional state after she suddenly lost her parents only 4 years prior to the pregnancy. She told me, quote, the grief that I've had to live with has definitely affected me in every way. I do blame them 100% for this. I think if I had never crossed paths with Bethany, I would have never experienced the physical and mental problems that I am facing now. It just never goes away. So that is the story of Mickey. We're talking, for those who are just joining us, we are speaking about the Bethany Christian Services organization. I encourage you guys to learn more about this. If you're not familiar with it, this is, I'm continuing to follow the story and I'll stay on it as much as I can. There's going to be more pieces. We're going to start looking at the international scene, and we're also going to try to end with some solutions and show you some, as I mentioned, there's like this not underground, but it's a growing internet community, social network community of people who have had their children adopted through Bethany Christian Services, or have had a negative interaction with them, and they're using TikTok, Instagram, etc., to find each other, to then raise awareness about these problems. And hopefully the idea would be that to prevent other mothers from following down the same path. I mean, that's really the only thing you can do, right? Is if we can get this word out, get this information out, and enough parents hear it, then maybe there's some parent that considers going to Bethany Christian Services, or they're considering adoption, that they might actually think about the consequences. Because I'm not trying to say that every adoption that has ever taken place through Bethany Christian Services, or every adoption that has ever taken place in the history of man, has turned out this way. Clearly, that's not the case. Obviously, that's not reality. But some of them do take place that way. Some of them do happen that way, and we need to find a way to move past that. And the way that we do that, at least from my perspective, is to educate people, to tell people that this is happening. If people don't know what's happening, how can they stop it? If people don't know that this is going on, how can they ask bigger questions, right? Because if I was a parent, and if I was somebody who couldn't have children and was pursuing an adoption as an alternative, I would definitely go to a place like Bethany. I would ask, if I dealt with them, for one, I would show them my reports and say, hey, look, have you seen this? These mothers are saying you did this thing and that thing to them. Can you explain to me? Can you answer for these accusations? And see what they say. And hopefully you would go somewhere better. But also, again, I think that what I'm learning from talking to these mothers is that the reality is that not all adoptions are what we are told. They're not all just there's a gay couple that wants to adopt because they can't have children, or there's a family that's been trying for 10 years and they just can't have children, so they adopt. Yes, those are the best case scenarios, but that's definitely not every scenario. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the times when things go wrong. So let's go ahead and get back to this Bethany Christian Services article. We're going to hear now about Charity J. Again, I'm not going to read these entire articles, but I do encourage you to go to thelastamericanvagabond.com. I want to give each of them a little bit of time though, so you can hear about their lives. Charity grew up in a home influenced by the Institute of Basic Life Principles. Have you ever heard of that? A controversial conservative denomination who has been referred to as a cult by some and the subject of a 2023 Amazon documentary titled Shiny Happy People. She was taught that her main goal in life should be to, quote, get married and have lots of children. She suffered emotional and psychological abuse during her childhood, and she chose to leave her family at age 19 for the Job Corps. And in 1997, she met a 27-year-old man who was religious as well, and she believed that he had shared values and goals, and they struck up a relationship, and they married soon after. But Charity says 6 months into the relationship, he became emotionally abusive, and that he became physically abusive once he learned that she was pregnant. Charity planned an escape and left with her son 1 month after he was born. So she runs away, leaves at 19 after living in what some have described as a cult, meets another religious man. They got together really quick because, you can't have sex if you're not married. So you get married, then emotional abuse starts, physical abuse starts once he learns she's pregnant, and then she leaves as soon as she can. She was briefly homeless before getting enough support to get a job and a place to live. Despite having a restraining order and stalking order in place against her ex, he violated both orders by showing up at her workplaces and getting her fired. He would eventually break into her apartment before being arrested and charged with attempted murder and child endangerment. Following the arrest, Charity was living in a shelter with her son. After a few days, the CPS arrived with the police officers and took her son into their custody. She said it was terrifying, quote, now I know what my son went through with trauma being separated from me. And after 6 months, so her son, basically, as she's in the homeless shelter, they come, CPS somehow, so someone calls them and they take her son away, and he goes into this organization that I probably will investigate in the future called D.A. Blodgett, and her son stayed with D.A. Blodgett. But D.A. Blodgett is also connected to Bethany Christian Services. And basically, Charity started to visit her son at D.A. Blodgett, and she noticed that he was regressing. He wasn't hitting the usual milestones for infants that they do checks for, keeping eye contact and just showing signs of developing. And she was encouraged by D.A. Blodgett to consider adoption as an option for her son. When she started saying, hey, something's wrong with my son, they're like, well, maybe you should consider getting him adopted. And they connected her to Bethany Christian Services. She said that she would get in trouble with the Bethany Christian Services social workers when she would comment on her son's health when she visited him. On one visit, she told me that he had a sinus infection and his nose was bleeding, blood was coming out of it, and she asked if she could take him to the doctor to help him. She's like, why are you guys not doing anything? Something's wrong here. And they accused her of being unstable. Imagine that. So she also says that a social worker with Bethany Christian Services told her that women like her make bad choices, so that adoption was the best choice for her son. Again, pretty crazy, pretty messed up. So it goes on from there. Eventually, she does sign over her parental rights, and they take her child. But what I thought was just really crazy, this is one part I want to tell you guys about. She was told that as soon as she delivered her son, he would be taken. And after surrendering her parental rights, she fled to Ohio. She was now pregnant with her second son and was told by a social worker that Michigan CPS practices relating to her son's adoption were criminal. So even just shortly after this happened, a Charity talked to her gynecologist, and she said, what, like she described the whole situation, and they started telling her what just happened to you was illegal. That was criminal. That there's no way that them taking your kid that quickly, and what Charity described as D.A. Blodgett and Bethany Christian Services funneling children between their organizations. After a month after the adoption, Charity contacted Bethany Christian Services to get a mailing address for her son. She was told that they could not give her the address and that they could not deliver letters or pictures for her. She was told that that the family had asked for no mail at the time. So she waits one more month. And again, you have to remember, she was told this was going to be an open adoption, letters, and all this kind of stuff. So she waits one more month, and she receives the same response. She told me, quote, felt like I was in a twilight zone. I still feel like I'm in a twilight zone talking about it. I did the thing they told me to do, and now I want to interact with my son. I wanted my son to be able to have those things, the letters and pictures. In the years since the adoption, she has had no contact with Bethany or the adoptive parents of her son. But as I mentioned earlier, 3 years ago, she started meeting other mothers on TikTok who have had similar experiences. She now runs her own TikTok account called the Bitter Birth Mom Club, where she shares her story and offers support for other mothers. She told me some of our stories are very different, but Bethany, at the end of the day, is the one that gained financially from what happened to all of us, and they are never going to come to account for this. Bethany is never going to be held accountable for making us strangers to our children, and it's so disgusting because they really think us, the birth parents, are not important to children. And she says here, I want people to understand that domestic violence is not something that should be held against a safe and stable parent in these situations. We deserve safety. We deserve better laws. Children shouldn't be removed from families because of domestic violence unless it's unsafe. And what she's talking about is that Bethany used the fact that she had been in a domestic violence situation against her to take her child, even though after the fact the baby was fine and safe, the husband was gone and all, and she created a home and a space for the baby, but they use it against her. Now let's talk about Jennifer. This will be the last one, and again, I encourage you guys to go read the article, The Last American Vagabond, and to learn more about this stuff. I really do implore you to learn more about this. I will continue to report on it as much as I can. I know that this is not unusual for some of you guys. For some of you, it might be very new, but the point is, this is all happening in the background, along with all the other corruption that's happening. You got the adoption industry, the foster industry, the CPS, the human trafficking. There's definitely connections between these things. I'm not accusing Bethany Christian Services of human trafficking. I'm saying there is absolutely a connection between these type of things and the fact that in these situations, children often end up being abused physically, emotionally, sexually, etc. And if we really care about the kids, I think we need to do a better job of trying to figure out how to help them. Jennifer was only 18 when she became pregnant. While attending a conservative college in 1990, uncertain of what to do, she confided in the dean of her school. And while pregnant students were typically expelled, she was told that if she participated in counseling, she could continue being a student. She was offered various pamphlets from different organizations, one of which was Bethany Christian Services. When she told her conservative Christian parents about this, they showed her anger and shame, and she was told that if she didn't give up the baby for adoption, she would not get support from them, and she would be totally cut off from them for financial support. Eventually, she would speak to a female counselor from Bethany to learn about her options, and at the time, open adoptions were relatively new, and Jennifer she told me she's the one who brought up the idea after learning about it. And from there, she says the Bethany Christian Services counselor steered her towards the idea. Looking back, Jennifer believes she was subject to subtle programming by the counselor who told her that she was incapable of raising the child on her own, also showing her pictures of potential adoptive parents. So they start showing you, like, look, these people can take your baby. These people can take your baby. And maybe just getting in a mother's mind who's already dealing with all this trauma, like, okay, I don't really want to do this, but look, they got a family waiting. Maybe this is the best option. And then, of course, the programming saying it's not like you don't have the resources. You look at you, you're too young. Your family's not going to help. They do whatever they can to discourage you. And again, Bethany Christian Services is a Christian organization that discourages abortion and promotes adoption. That's a whole deeper element of that. And I interviewed author Catherine Joyce. You can find that at theconsciousresistance.com last week, talking more about her work on the broader adoption industry and the Christian angle. By early 1991, Jennifer says the potential adoptive mother became very involved in the process. And this seems to be a pattern. The adoptive parents get super stoked and really involved, and to the point of stressing out the parents. She said she continued to feel pressured, overwhelmed, but also numb. Jennifer would end up having her pregnancy induced through drugs because her pregnancy had gone past the calculated due date. And while she says she requested that the adoptive parents not be present for the birth, she was ignored, and the adoptive mother was in the operating room during the birth. She said the adoptive mother got to see her baby before she did. As a result of the drugs, Jennifer was forced to undergo an emergency C-section. And Jennifer's parents came to the hospital. They saw the baby. They apologized, but they still said they can't help. The father of Jennifer's child, now her husband, they were also working to try to come up with some solution to keep the baby. 3 days after the birth, the Bethany Christian Services counselor tells Jennifer, it's time to hand over your baby. Jennifer's husband said that he was cornered by the counselor and pressured to sign a termination of his parental rights. And after that, they came to her saying, come on, your boyfriend already did it. All you got to do is just sign it. Go ahead and do it. And Jennifer said that she knows now that she should have been asked to sign paperwork before handing over her son. However, 2 days after Bethany took her son, the counselor came to Jennifer's house to get her to sign. She says that she was still under the influence of the painkillers from the C-section, and that when she expressed doubt about the adoption, again, the counselor used the threat of Child Protective Services to, quote, paint me in a corner. Jennifer said, quote, I was told that if I tried to get him back, you're going to have to get a lawyer and he's going to go into foster care. She was told that since her boyfriend had signed the paperwork, she was required to sign. Quote, I wasn't given proper information, told about the right to change my mind or what exactly the process was. And after the adoption took place, this is another really messed up part. So the adoption take place, they say that they're going to do the letters. Well, in her case, they actually did let her write letters to her child, even though they're a baby. The idea is that when they get older, they can read these letters. And in one of her letter, she said that, she expressed that she was not doing well, that she was depressed and she wasn't feeling good. And she felt that they had stolen her baby from her. And then the adoptive parents told this to Bethany Christian Services, and they told her, you can't say that. You can't be writing these things. And they told her something like, you can't write your true feelings. And after 6 months passed, she said she only heard from the adoptive parents once or twice a year with letters and photos. She kept in touch with the counselor for a time, but had few interactions with the adoptive couple. She saw them a few times over the years, but they would eventually sever all communication when the child was 13 years old. And she's tried to maintain relationships with her child, but she says it's been a roller coaster of emotions. And these days, Jennifer says she wants more people to understand the truth of adoptions and how it impacts the birth mothers. She says birth mothers live their lives with grief, second guessing every decision they make, and living in fear of having their children taken away from them. Quote, we're told specifically, move on with our lives and pretend it's not happening. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of not having a voice. There are so many of us, and we're coming out of the woodwork. It is my immense honor to be able to tell this story for these mothers. I know that some of you might not really understand the gravity of this situation, but for me, it feels great to be able to step in and help how I can. Not great that this is happening, obviously, but this is what journalism is about. This is why I do this work, so that when somebody in my audience, as this case, reaches out and says, hey, Derrick, there's a story and nobody's talking about it. Can you please help me out? I can dive in. I can do the work. I can get on the phone and make phone calls and do the research and find, is there a story? And if there is a story, what's my role that I can do to bring it to a wider audience? We're streaming across 10 different platforms right now. This is going to go out all over my channels and hopefully reach more people, and it's going to get shared by other channels. That's the goal. How do we spread information? How do we get to the right people so that, again, potential adoptive parents, mothers who have children in tough situations and aren't sure if they want to pursue adoption or what, so your full resources, so the full situation, so you are informed and educated, because you can't make a proper decision if you're not educated about what's really going on. And this is just the beginning. I will be doing more articles. As I said, there's going to be at least one more focused on the international scene related to the adoption, and then talking about solutions. And also, I will be talking about this situation, Justice for Katera. I encourage you to look that up, as our brother here is encouraging you to do. Search Justice for Katera. That'll be part of the next story that I'm going to do. Yeah, guys, please share that article. It's at thelastamericanvagabond.com. It doesn't give me any pleasure or joy to write about these things, other than, as I just said, to try to help people. But I understand it's messed up. I understand it's not fun to hear about these situations, and it's not all black and white. Some people would say, well, they should have been more responsible. They shouldn't have been having sex at a young age. They should, there's all kinds of excuses you can make. But at the end of the day, once again, it seems like this is a theme on tonight's show. If you care about the children, like a lot of people like to pretend, and then you should care about what's happening in Palestine. You should care about what's happening with Bethany Christian Services, and you should want these mothers to be properly informed, because the data shows that children are better off being raised by their own parents, by their own families, when possible. I'm not saying that's always possible. That's always the best decision or anything. I'm not blaming anybody who chooses adoption. I'm just saying, when there's that option, we should do what we can to support that option. Sometimes, as I've learned through my research, sometimes these mothers are literally just maybe a few $100s away from being able to keep their child. Like some of the mothers that Catherine Joyce's research was showing, was that if somebody had loaned them $500 or $1,000, they would have been able to, make a couple ends meet, and then been able to get a new apartment so that they could have welcomed their baby in, right? Think about that. How many parents out there who keep their babies struggle and live check to check sometimes. Sometimes times are hard. You like, for those who've lived in middle and lower class, you know what I'm talking about, that sometimes, you go without for a little bit, but you have your parents' love, you have the security and the safety of a home. And that's something that's beautiful. And maybe a foster home, an adoptive home can do that for children sometimes. But if you have the option to do that for a mother, for the children, for the family to stay together, that is a better opportunity. I'm not saying I know what the perfect solution is, but I think it is pretty fucked up that, to hear a mother say, if I had only had just a little bit more resources, I would have been able to take care of my baby and I wouldn't have had to give him up. And then none of this would have ever happened. Right. It's sad to hear. And a lot of these programs aren't necessarily available to everybody. And we don't even have to get into like welfare and that whole debate and discussion. I'm just saying it sucks when lives are entirely turned upside down and maybe in some cases ruined because of, just coming up short on some bills. All right, I got a couple of more headlines, and then I'm going to start wrapping up because I got some dinner to eat, and dinner's good, and I've been talking for an hour and a half. Sorry about the audio earlier. Thanks for everybody who's sticking through that. Let's go ahead and see what we got up next. This is actually kind of I'm going to touch on this real briefly. This is related, not directly related to Bethany Christian Services, but it's related to a similar topic, and this might be one of my new research topics in the near future. But somebody shared this with me. Let me go ahead and zoom in. This was on Twitter. I don't know who this person is. This is, how far back was this? This was May 13th. So more than a month ago. Robbie Starbuck, new film, War on Children. Okay, and he basically posts, this guy, whoever he is, says there's a scandal going in Guatemala that everyone needs to know about. The Attorney General in Guatemala is investigating child trafficking at the U.S. border, and it appears that the Biden administration is retaliating. The interview you're about to hear is apparently so dangerous that the Secretary of Guatemala says he was warned by someone claiming to carry a message from the U.S. Embassy that he was playing with fire if he took part in the interview. Last week, this is early May, they raided an NGO named Save the Children. Joe Biden used to be chair of Save the Children's board. I haven't researched these facts yet, by the way, so I don't know if that's accurate before somebody goes and accuses me of lying or whatever. Investigations into the NGOs like this are part of Guatemala's overall investigation as they search out who's doing the trafficking and where's the money's coming from. And so he goes deeper into this, and I looked up a little bit into it. Save the Children disputes abuse allegations after Guatemalan prosecutors raid their offices. So there's like a raid happening late April, early May of this organization called Save the Children in Guatemala with potential connections to Jill Biden and other people. And so if anybody has any info on this, feel free to reach out to me. If you've seen anybody following up with this, it came by late April, early May, and I haven't heard anybody else talking about it. Like I said, I don't know if it's accurate, don't know what's going on, but sometimes there's stories like this that pop up, guys. This is what I mean. Like, there's just so much going on. Israel, Bethany Christian Services, there's the mainstream stuff, there's deeper conspiracies going on. And then a story like this comes a month ago and it just goes by in a blip and we move on with our lives. And if somebody like me or you doesn't pick up this thread and run with it and dig into it, we might never hear what exactly the truth is. And it just kind of sits there hanging out, like, hey, there might be some child trafficking going on in Guatemala at this, at this center, but is anybody going to stop and do the research, do the work for it? I don't know. So I'm going to see what I can do on that. But last story for the night, and then we're going to get some music. There was a declaration signed by Doctors Protecting Children, doctorsprotectingchildren.org. And they had a press conference last week, as you can see here in this video, where all these different doctors representing various organizations came together. They held a press conference at the National Press Club in DC, as you can see here, announcing they're taking a stand against transgender healthcare, against gender interventions, surgeries, hormones, etc. Says who we are as physicians, together with nurses, psychotherapists, and behavioral health clinicians, other health professionals, scientists, researchers, and public health and policy professionals. We have serious concerns about the physical and mental health effects of the current protocols promoted for the care of children and adolescents in the United States who express discomfort with their biological sex. So that's their general statement. And here's another quote. Therefore, given the recent research and the revelations of the harmful approach advocated by WPATH, which I've talked about, and its followers in the United States, we, the undersigned, call upon the medical professional organizations of the U.S., including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Endocrine Society, the Pediatric Endocrine Society, American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, to follow the science and their European professional colleagues and immediately stop the promotion of social affirmation, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for children and adolescents who experience distress over their biological sex. Instead, these organizations should recommend comprehensive evaluations and therapies aimed at identifying and addressing the underlying psychological comorbidities and neurodiversity, including autism, that often predispose to and accompany gender dysphoria. We also encourage the physicians who are members of these organizations to contact their leadership and urge them to adhere to the evidence-based research now available. And they go further on. They have some declarations and they recognize various things. And it's about 6 or 7 statements here. But those quotes pretty much summarized it. And again, the website is doctorsprotectingchildren.org. This was just happened on Thursday, June 6th. And they have co-signers, the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, the American Academy of Medical Ethics, American College of Family Medicine. I think probably the most famous one at this point is the American College of Pediatricians, the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, just all kinds of different groups so far signing on board, and there's different individual doctors and health leaders who are signing. This made some news, but mainly in the independent media. And what I thought was interesting, if you reread what I just said here, that they're calling on them to follow the science and their European professional colleagues. And why do they say that? Because the United States is not following the science. Because some of the countries, and I talked about this in my report, Gender Identity, which I'll show you in a second, some of the European countries like the Netherlands and Sweden, some of the Nordic countries that have been promoting this care for a long time are now reversing course and going back and saying, hey, we realize that actually we've been doing some harm to these children and it's not safe to just give them whatever they want as far as these hormones treatments. And it's not safe to affirm what they believe, because the affirmation, despite what parents say, well, it's going to keep my kid from killing themselves, it actually further stigmatizes the potential mental illness that they're dealing with. That's not to say all trans people are mental ill, but for many people, it is a mental health issue. So I will continue to follow this story. Again, if you go to theconsciousresistance.com, search into our documentaries tab, you can find my mini documentary. Here's the documentaries right here. Gender Identity. It was based on a 4-part series I did for The Last American Vagabond. I released it in September of last year. Identity Crisis, an investigation of the gender identity debate. I encourage you to watch that, listen to that if you haven't. And I actually talked to a transgender individual and I asked them some of these questions about this data. And I think it's, again, trying to cut through the nuance. It's not black and white. Things are a little deeper than some people want to say, and is based on my 4-part article series for The Last American Vagabond. Guys, that's where I'm going to end it for tonight. You can find me every week at theconsciousresistance.com. I highly encourage you to bookmark our website. Check it every week. Go to our social media. If you can support me on a monthly basis, $1, $2, $3 and up, go to derrickbroze.substack.com. Go to buymeacoffee.com/derrickbroze. And support true independent journalism where you can, guys. That's what I'm about. That's what I'm here doing. And we're going to continue to do this show every Monday night, 7 p.m. U.S. Central. Thanks to everybody who's been tuning in. We're going to end now with a song. We always highlight a conscious artist at the end. And this week I'm highlighting me. Well, not me, Derrick Broze, but the other me, 33. I perform music under the name 33. And you can find my music at 33ishere.com. I'm going to be hosting a show next Thursday, June 20th in Houston, Texas. If anybody's around, this is going to be my EP release show. I'm releasing a new EP called Still Writing, 5 new songs, including the song that you're about to hear, which is a little bit of a love song. I wrote it for my partner, Miriam. It's called Leaving the Past Behind. And it's just about, for me, like recognizing, you get to a point, I think, especially us as men, but all people, where you got to leave things in the past, especially, with relationships. And I realized wow, I found somebody really special. I need to stop looking and wondering about what could have been or what's that person up to. And I'll be real, that's sometimes a struggle that I've had. So this song was about sort of letting all that go and then making it clear, I'm looking forward to the future that we're creating. And it's a fun song. I like the beat. I like the music. I like the lyrics. I hope you guys enjoy it. You can find more at 33ishere.com. Please share this video with your friends and family. Share my articles on Bethany Christian Services. Keep praying for the Palestinians, for the Israelis, for all the people. Let's stop othering each other. Let's stop dehumanizing each other. Let's start putting our love back into our daily actions, living and breathing the practices we want, not waiting for somebody else to come do it, not waiting for a president. We have to be an example of it every day if you want to see it in the real world. You got to model the behavior you want your children and the future generations to understand and to live. We have to live it. We have to be the example of it. We can't just talk about it. We can't just wish it'll happen. If we don't live it, then it's never going to happen. So I commit my life to living, to being a better person every day. I commit my life to making cool, awesome music that will hopefully inspire and empower people. And enjoy this song, guys. It's called Leaving the Past Behind from 33ishere.com. I'll see you next week. Till next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free, my friends. Don't ever let them tell you any different. Peace.
You know, sometimes you just gotta share your love. I'm not looking to the past no more, 'cause you're the only one I want, and that's for sure. Now I'm leaving the past behind. I finally got something to look forward to, and she's all mine. Baby, I've stumbled so many times before. I had to pick myself up off the floor, and there's a chance that I might still fall short. But I'm searching, just trying to explore, finding my way while I start to heal. I once was told, free the people, keep it real. Was living my life, but not living right. Then one day a queen came into my life. Her presence so strong, I could barely see straight. Who could have known that we sealed our fate? But once again I stumbled, I tripped, and she stood by me when she could have dipped. And now I'm committed to being a man of my word. Sick of accepting less than I am, how absurd. To see where I've been and the future ahead, I gotta let go of the past so I don't end up dead. And I'm not looking to the past no more, 'cause you're the only one I want, and that's for sure. Now I'm leaving the past behind. I finally got something to look forward to, and she's all mine. And I'm not looking to the past no more, 'cause you're the only one I want, and that's for sure. Now I'm leaving the past behind. I finally got something to look forward to, and she's all mine. Sometimes I fall, I stumble and I trip myself up, making mistakes, I unzip all the progress I've made over the years. I like to think I've been overcoming my fears. Truth is, I still have my pain and trauma. Yeah, I'm healing the best I can, trying to avoid drama. But here I go again, creating more of it. She's gonna lose her patience if I don't get it together. Take her on a picnic, it's the perfect weather. Forever and ever, I've gotta treat her like a queen, 'cause she's the best there ever was, she's my everything. I could live 1,000 lives and never know a love like this. I could die a happy man watching you shake them hips. You only deserve the best, and I'm capable. I'm done playing these games, man, I'm done playing the fool. And I'm not looking to the past no more, 'cause you're the only one I want, and that's for sure. Now I'm leaving the past behind. I finally got something to look forward to, and she's all mine. And I'm not looking to the past no more, 'cause you're the only one I want, and that's for sure. Now I'm leaving the past behind. I finally got something to look forward to, and she's all mine. I promise I'ma dedicate my time to you. There's something special about this love, both old and new. It feels like I've known you for 1,000 lifetimes, 'cause I've been seeing all the right signs from Creator. Shows me this is the right path. 1 + 1 = 2, it's just simple math. You and me together feels better than ever. We can weather the weather, it's beyond just pleasure. And at the same time, it's more joy than I've ever known, 'cause our roots run deep, the seeds have been sown. I believe in the future that we're co-creating. I love you long time till we're in our 80s. There's nothing that can stop a love so true. So I'm committing my life to loving you. I'm letting go of the past to live in the present. I just wanna love you right, 'cause you're heaven sent. And I'm not looking to the past no more, 'cause you're the only one I want, and that's for sure. Now I'm leaving the past behind. I finally got something to look forward to, and she's all mine. I love you, baby.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.